Howdy, welcome back to the shop and welcome to the greasy pig of a Chevrolet that I have. This is a 97 GMC Jimmy. The problem today was I jumped in it and ABS light came on, which is not that uncommon. But when I took off, I had only first gear and no speedometer. So I got down the road a piece. It would not shift out of first gear, speedometer would not work. And I got up underneath here and I wallered around on the wires, speedometer started working. So what I've got somewhere is a bad connection in the speedometer pickup wires. What we're kind of looking at, you can't really see it, I know, lighting's terrible, everything sucks. But this is the transmission plug. Now, do note that the arrow, there's an arrow on the plug, which you probably can't see because the lighting's terrible. Arrow looks at you. This plug will only go on one way, and thankfully they put an arrow on there to where you can get it. And you squeeze on both sides of the arrow to release this plug. And this is the main transmission plug here. So we're going to unplug that, and I'm going to unplug the harness from the speed sensor, and we're going to flip most of this harness out from underneath the truck. And we'll be back in a minute. So here's the main transmission connector. There's the arrow that I was talking about. And now you really can't look at this and touch it at the same time, but it does have knurled, if this isn't covered in filth an inch thick, little knurled places on the sides that you can squeeze. And as you squeeze that, that's what releases the latch that latches that on there. Now this whole assembly, this whole wiring harness runs about 4 inches away from the exhaust pipe. And you know, after 30 or 40 years, they do rot. And like I said, somewhere in this harness, there's a broke wire. So I'm going to get things took apart here and laid up here on the workbench, and then we'll go from there. All right, so here's what we've got. This bare conductor, whoa, there went the camera. Sorry guys. This bare conductor right here is tied into a chassis ground. And here's your speed sensor pickup lead, and it is a twisted 2 conductor lead, and it's got the shield wire in with it in a harness. Of course, that's all wrapped up by itself here. And what this does is this keeps this pickup, your speed sensor pickup, from getting weird radio Mars signals from the computer, because when it fires the PC, the pulse width modulation for the torque converter through this plug, because this is a PWM, or pulse width modulation, torque converter lockup, and some of the other solenoids, that makes a lot of electrical noise. Well, these things run the pickups for your speed sensor run on millivolts. So electrical noise and millivolts don't really go good together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip this off up here in the virgin wire where I've got good wire. I'm going to clip these leads off, and we'll get out from underneath here, and I'll build up a new lead, and we'll go from there. Okay, so we're back here at the bench, and I've got here's my old speed sensor, and here's my new speed sensor. Okay, I've got my old cheap wore out Sperry multimeter here. I've got it set to the 2000 ohm range. And I've got the old harness, I've just got it tied onto my meter leads. So here's the old sensor, and you can see that sensor is reading open. Here's the new sensor, and it's reading about 13,000 or 1,300 ohms, 1.35 kiloohms, so it'd be 1,350 kiloohms. So the way that these things work, these are magnetic. So when you pull them out of the transfer case or transmission, if there's a little bit of metal stuck to them, don't be scared. It's a magnet. And inside of here is about 3 miles of cat hair copper wire. And I mean, it is finer than cat hair. And this runs against a reluctor wheel, which this is just no gear out of my lathe. But that reluctor wheel runs, and as these teeth on the reluctor wheel comes across this magnetic, or the core of this, it creates a small voltage. So we'll kick this thing over on, I think probably the 2-volt range will be adequate. Plug her back in. See, we're getting about 1/4 volt, depending on how fast and how much I move this. So you can kind of see how that works. Now in reality, you know, this is a bigger reluctor wheel with bigger teeth, and it's spinning, well, in 4th gear it's spinning 2,000 RPM. But you get the idea how this works. Now my old pickup speed sensor, in the generator world this would be called a mag pickup. The old one actually is making voltage. But it's open. It's open electrically. So what's happening inside of here, one of those wires is broken, and it's just kind of sort of working when it wants to. And this thing really gave no warning. Like I said, I jumped in the truck this morning, poof, it don't work. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to replace all of this. This is on the 4-wheel drive models. You have this extension lead, and this is twisted wire, but it's not shielded. And I have some shielded 3-conductor 18 gauge wire that I'm going to make a new lead up, and I'm just going to eliminate this joint, and I have a new plug here. This is the part number, Sierra Charlie 131 for the sensor, and this is the standard part number, Sierra 553 for the plug assembly. So I'm going to get this made up, heat shrunk together, and soldered and heat shrunk and prettied up, and probably soldered on back on the truck. So, and there's no real need to film any of that because you can't see what I'm doing anyway. It's a dark, scary hole that's dripping in grease and filth. So anyway, like I said, I'm replacing all of this stuff here. I trust this about as much as I trust the Democrats' campaign promises. And you know, this truck's got to work every time. So hope you all enjoyed, hope you learned something. If you got any questions, ask them in the comments. Otherwise, y'all drive safe, watch for deer.